Washington, D.C., where from Umoja House, Baba Lumumba takes court. Baba Lumumba, welcome back to WOL Radio. I'm not hearing Baba Lumumba. I'm not hearing him, though. Baba Lumumba? Hit the right button, Baba Lumumba, because I know he wants to talk about the battle between black culture and pop culture. Because he claims that without an African-based cultural frame of reference, the negative pop culture influences tend to impact our youngsters. So that's what he's going to talk about. He's always coming up with some thought-provoking issues that makes you think. That's what he does. So Baba Lumumba, I hear him right there.
You can hear me, Carl?
Radio. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Great. At last.
Yes, sir. Well, welcome back to WOL Radio. Baba Lumumba.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. The battle between black culture and pop culture. You claim that without African-based cultural frame of reference, the negative pop culture influences tend to impact our youngsters. Can you expound on that?
Carl, it's something that I talk about quite a bit when I come on your show, the importance of cultural frame of reference. But let me start by talking about, this is Black History Month, and you can see kind of pop culture at work in terms of its influence. And let me first of all define what I mean by pop culture. I define pop culture as the passive influence that control the ideas that we have about life and our surroundings, that come to us without us realizing what they are or where they came from. Now, if you can understand that definition, the passive influences that come to us through what the ideas that we have about life and our surroundings, that come to us without us realizing it, that what they are or where they came from. Now, in other words, where do we get what we feel about life? Where does it come from? Where does this influence us around? Because we all have these opinions and these attitudes and whatever about life. So where do they come from? It turns out that many of them, if not most of them, come to us through what I call pop culture. Now, pop culture includes advertisement. It includes entertainment, movies, plays, TV, friends, the internet. All are aspects of pop culture, and they all influence us. They all have this impact on us without even realizing that they're impacting us. That's where these our ideas about life actually come from. They come from these sources. Let's take, for example, advertisement. We don't think of advertisement as actually influencing us. And of course, its main purpose is to influence us to buy something. But it has all these other influences. I'll give you an example. Over the last 5 years, we see all of a sudden the couples on the air are integrated couples. They're black and white women, black and white people together. Now, that didn't happen 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, but all of a sudden it started happening. We can't turn on television without seeing a black woman with a white husband or a white husband with a black man. We didn't see that a long time ago. And then all of a sudden we see it. It's proliferates everywhere you look. That's pop culture. That's an attempt to influence us to not marry each other, to look to other people for our spouses. Well, what's the effect of that? If we do that, then we lose family as a basis of our unity, as our basis of our progress. If that becomes popular, which is what the sudden advertisement is displaying, then what do we get out of the deal? Well, what we get is a weaker people. We get a people whose families. So if we decide that we're not going to marry each other, then what basis do we have for struggling and working together and elevating our people collectively? Well, that's a passive way of giving us a message, and it comes through advertising for some insurance company, or advertising for some medicine, or advertising for but we're not even aware of it. We see it all of a sudden. Whoa, it's okay. Maybe I should look for a white person to marry. Maybe that's my answer, etc. entertainers have a tremendous impact on us, and a lot of that is very, very negative. A lot of what they display, the conspicuous consumption, the greed, the pettiness, it really becomes a model for our young people. A model of saying, well, I'm going to be like so-and-so, or a boy say, I'm going to wear a dress like some rapper puts on or something, because, well, these are all passive influences that have tremendous impact on us. And for the most part, there's a very, very negative impact. Let's take the whole concept of Black History Month, which is quite interesting. When we see Black History Month, what we're talking about is us separated from Africa. That's what Black History Month is. It is Black people who have done something in the context of the American system, in the context of our oppression. It's not our connection with other Black people in the world. That's not what Black History Month is about. All the people they celebrate, they're going to go with Jackie Robinson, and they're going to go with, whoever they're going to go. But it's going to be Black people who are pretty much defined by their relationship to white people in this society. It's not going to be Black people whose relationship is defined by their relationship to each other and to Black antiquity or Black internationalism or Black Africa or Black culture. It ain't going to be that now. Because that links us in ways that the society doesn't want to link us to, doesn't want us to celebrate. Or another example. Why is Kwanzaa not in the African American Museum downtown, the big museum that's supposed to display African culture and Black people's culture, and they eliminate the one holiday that we created that celebrates our connection with the rest of Black people is not in that museum? Why is that the case? Because it falls out of their accepted criteria for their definition of us, or their willingness to accept our definition of ourselves. So what we get is this onslaught of attempts to limit our ability to define ourselves on our own terms. We get a cascade of influences that tell us essentially we have to be what they made us. Forget this idea of being what we are. Forget the notion of you were something before you were slaves and incorporated. Start your beginnings at your confinement, at your oppression. Make of yourself, define yourself in terms of the circumstances that we enforced on you, that we forced on you, that we made even though we took your culture, we robbed you of your language, you told you couldn't play drums, we made you work, and you said, yes, start there, define yourself there. Well, once you do that, you're vulnerable to all these other negative influences. People, for example, and I would say that people, for example, anybody else who comes here with a culture, comes here with an identity, when they're hit with pop culture influences, when they look at advertisement, they immediately can compare that to their own culture. They can immediately say, wait a minute, my culture tells me to marry this kind of person. The TV is telling me to marry somebody else. So they have a basis of comparison. They can fight back. They can actually say, wait a minute, I have some defense against it. They can mitigate the pop culture influences. But we are a people who literally were stripped of our culture. What we call culture is really style. We don't have the elements of culture. We have the elements of style. That's all they left us with. When you take a person's language and their food and their clothing and their collective attitude and way of looking at life, you leave them stripped of their capacity to fight against or to come up with an identity that is founded in their origins, in their...
Right. Hold that thought right there, Baba Lumumba. We got to take a short break here. We got to check the traffic and weather in the DMV. But before we go there, when I come back, tell us, because nobody's actually forcing us to do what we're seeing on these screens. So explain that point for us as well. Folks, you want to speak to Baba Lumumba, reach out to us, 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after the short break right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.